All the little chicks with the crimson lips go Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Living in sin with the safety pin. Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Do 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 do. Ohio.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
What is going on, guys? Happy Thursday. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sundays. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And yes, welcome back, guys. Did you know that Cleveland rocks? We were just having a panel on RBN, myself and JB with the guys from Midwestern Marks. And Noah was telling us that he grew up in Cleveland. And after he said that, all I could hear was that Drew Carey theme song in my head, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. I'm telling you, if you've never seen the Drew Carey show, like they really made it look like that intro song and they're dancing in the streets. Didn't it make you just want to go to Cleveland? All right, guys, quite a bit to discuss tonight. One of the stories I'm going to discuss was actually sent to me by a viewer that I think a lot of you are going to be interested in. We're going to get into this housing situation in this country. But first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, Meaty Bunch. And of course, there are also members. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. All of their names are here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Deborah and Stuart D. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you guys so much. Want to go ahead and give quick shout outs to people in the chat. And let's see what's popping, people. All right, what's going on, Mastermind? I'm not even going to dignify that poll with the response. I understand. Shout out to Dabby Dab, says 0 yes votes. The not sure votes are basically trolls at this point. Hit the wrong button on accident. Shout out to E-Dog, says, where's our reparations at? That's a good question for Joe Biden, E-Dog. Greetings, Notori, says, I wish there was a fuck no. I hear you. I hear you. Shout out to Ashira, says, who are the not sures? They're hilarious. Hey, at least they're honest. I appreciate the honesty. Greetings, Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, everybody. Sabby. Rising needs to just add a third chair just for you. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I was on Rising earlier today. I don't know. I don't think that would work just because they have a left voice, right? So Bree is the left voice. Robbie, he's libertarian, but obviously they would point to him more so as the right voice, like on the right. So I think they have that part covered. I'm not sure how they would do that, but thank you, Delthea. Shout out to Matthew for just becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Matthew a big whoop, 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 whoop. Shout out to Ilhanner, says hello to Mastermind. Greetings, Silva Surfer, says Sabby. What's up? Shout out to Terry, says hello, Sabby in chat. Greetings, Luz. It's telling that 1% of people want to give more money to the Ukraine. Shout out to Mika, Mastermind, Dabby, Dabinator. Interesting names here. Greetings, Mark, says Sabby. I picked yes by accident. It was you. It was Mark. Markety Mark. Greetings, Monarch, says J2E voted for more money to Ukraine. I'm sure of it. Shout out to Joe, says hi, perfect people. Greetings, Taffy, says doobie doobie doo. That's a scary picture there. What is that? Is that a puppet? Yikes. What's up, Dr. Nick, says hi, everybody. Greetings, Couch Potato, says, right on time. Shout out to Sean, says, yo. What's going on? Red 6 says, hello, Sabby. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, here we goes. Greetings, Foxy Thawny. Are we about to watch the hastily made tourism video, Cleveland? We are not. We are not. What's the one thing that people go to visit Cleveland for? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And yes, I've been there. It's huge. You need a lot of hours to go through that place, let me tell you. We were there for a couple of hours and we didn't see the whole thing. Shout out to Steve, says, hello, everybody. Greetings, Ravina, who's a Sabby member, says, doobie doo, chilling with Sabby for the night. Friday night. Thursday night, though. Shout out to PXL, says, shout out to my hometown, Dayton, Ohio. We got an Ohio in the chat. Greetings, Jay, says, good Thursday, folks. Shout out to Corey, who's a Sabby member, says, good evening, Sabby fam. What's going on, P. Smith, who's a Sabby member, says, Ukraine is an endless hunger pit. We will get into all of that tonight. Shout out to Lana, says, hey, Sabby. Greetings, Danny. RFK Jr. left the Democratic Party. Not yet, but he's talking about it. And we're going to get into that. Greetings, Nikki's World says, hello, everyone. Shout out to Bryce, says, what's up, Sabby and everyone. And greetings, Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says, here I am, and I'm late again. Here I go again on my own. I'm in a singing mood tonight. Let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail, and we'll get started with our news stories for tonight. All right. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing RFK Jr. independent run. Maybe we'll get into all of that and this recent interview from his campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich. We're also going to discuss Russell Brand update. What does this have to do with Rumble? I don't know if you've heard, if you're not been on Twitter or you're not following this story. I do have an update in reference to this accusations against Russell Brand, but more importantly, information coming out of the UK Parliament and where does Rumble stand on this particular issue. I'm also going to discuss Kevin McCarthy doubts Zelensky. Ooh, honey, it is not looking good in DC right now. Look at the look on Kevin's face. How dare you come to my home? There's a movie where the guy said, how dare he? What did he say? Oh, The Godfather. When he goes, you come into my home? Not once you call me Godfather. And we're also going to discuss storage unit homes. Yes, you heard that correctly. Believe it or not, this is also happening. It's been happening for a while, but someone sent me this story and I think people need to talk about it. And we're going to get into the whole cost of living issue for 2023. But let's get into it, guys. Not once you call me Godfather. You come into my home. All right, let's go ahead and get into our first story, which is storage unit living. So a couple of years ago, tiny homes became a popular, topic, right? Like it started off as kind of this, I don't know, earthy kind of thing. A couple of people decided, why don't I just build a very tiny home that I can afford to live in, and I'll own it, and we can put it on wheels. And if I have to move it, I can pick it up and move it. Then that trend started to catch on. And over time, tiny homes have actually become more expensive because then it became trendy, right? Like, tiny homes originally was for people who didn't have enough money to put down, a payment for a single family home. So they built a tiny home. Along the way, then it was like people that did have money to buy a single family home decided, oh, let's make this trendy. And they made tiny homes trendy. And then tiny homes became more expensive. So there are tiny homes that are over $100,000. Like, they really found a way to soup these things up, right? My dad said tiny homes were just a trailer. His words, not mine. But now it has gotten to the point where people are actually living in storage units. Now, if you've ever had a storage unit, I have before, you put your items in there for an extended amount of time, depending on, when you're going to move. It's a place where you can house some of your items if you don't have storage in your apartment. Some people do it for that. But anyway, it's meant to be a temporary thing. And it's definitely not meant to be a place for you to live. But that's been happening. I want to start with this first clip here from TikTok. This was a story that came out of Boston where there was a family that was living in a storage unit. I want to show this clip first. This is wild.
Now to a sign of the housing crisis. People are turning storage units into living quarters. Boston Inspectional Services and police, though, are shutting down this dangerous situation. WBZ's Julie McDonald is live tonight in Boston with the changes underway. Julie?
Well, Liam, they told WBZ, a nearby business, that...
Eric, can we do a volume boost on this one? Sorry, this one's a little bit lower volume than the other one. But yeah, this story was coming out of Boston. Obviously, it's very expensive to live here in Boston. So I actually wasn't surprised to see this take place here. Let me do the
now to a sign of the housing crisis. People are...
There we go. See if it works now. I don't know what happened with this. Oh, hold on. Eric, can you fix this really quick? I don't know what I did. TikTok does that sometimes. Thank you.
Storage units into living quarters. Boston Inspectional Services and police, though, are shutting down this dangerous situation. WBZ's Julie McDonald is live tonight in Boston with the changes underway. Julie?
Well, Liam, they told WBZ, a nearby business, that it was everyone who had been living here was offered to be taken to nearby shelters. I did speak with a couple who has been living here. They were seen leaving, their arms filled with bags, walking away from what's been home for a year. How long have you been living here?
About a year.
Jose Rivera and his wife, just two of those, made to move out Wednesday from the storage unit on Mass Ave. He says they'd sleep there during the day and take off at night.
You're supposed to leave after 10 o'clock, right? So we do. We leave before 10 o'clock.
Inspectional Services was there Tuesday and found several units being used as living spaces, complete with curtains, coolers, food, and even electrical extension cords.
I've called and I've made many complaints about it.
Jamal Herring spends hundreds of dollars every month storing his belongings. Every time he visits the unit, he can't believe what he sees.
And you go in there near the bathroom and it's a long line out there, like people getting up, waiting to go to work or something.
He and others familiar with the area say this has been going on for years.
I mean, I know from years ago, people used to sleep across the street in the U-Haul vans. People break in anywhere to sleep. People do whatever they can to get by.
Okay, so that was Boston, right? So coming out of my spot here, typically what people will try to do is they'll try to be very quiet during the day in those storage units so that the owner of the storage unit and the management is not suspicious or doesn't hear them moving around. I mean, it's it's easy to hear noise coming from those storage units. But I do want to add, number one, I don't recommend this. Living in a storage unit is not safe. People have been known to rob storage units before, especially at night. So that other gentleman, he said he had been living in a storage unit for over a year. So that's coming out of Boston. But they're not alone. Like, there's another video I want to show you where it says many Americans are struggling to find a permanent housing. Some are living in their storage unit. Homelessness is not a choice. It's the result of high rent and a lack of resources. Let's get into this clip here.
Many Americans are struggling to find permanent housing. Some are living in their storage units. Homelessness is not a choice. It's the result of high rent and lack of resources.
First of all, I needed power for my unit. So what I did is I ran an extension cord along the power cable up here, and I sort of zip tied it up. So you can't really tell it's power is going to my unit unless you are looking closely.
So Monarch, to your point, when you said there's no electricity and there's no power inside those units, this guy found a way around that. So he basically has a cord running through. You'll see here.
So this is my unit here, and at the top of the unit you can see I have an antenna, and that's so I can get a cell signal inside the unit itself, because once you close the door, it drops all signal. I have a lock, which I've magnetized onto the door, so it looks like it's locked, even when it's not. And then when I actually do want to lock it, I can just use this lock or use another one down here and leave that one there. All right, so let's take a look at the unit now.
So check this out.
So in here, I've got my TV, entertainment center set up there. I've got my bed. I've got my kitchen area over there, complete with a fridge, and my couch over here. Once you're inside here, you can close the door. And I've screwed on a latch here, so that way you can close it and sort of lock it from the inside. Up here, I've got a toaster oven, and this toaster oven actually works pretty well. I'd say it works just as well as a conventional oven. I've got some dishes over here, got some more pots and pans over here, and my fridge is right here. Underneath I've got a filing cabinet, some tools, and some storage for some other stuff I have. Up on this part of the kitchen I have cutting board so I can make some lunch or dinner there. I have a hot plate for boiling water, cereal. Up here is the Tupperware, and then over here I've got a food cupboard for all my food. And this is the sink I've built, and the sink is basically like a 25-liter container filled with water, and I've attached these tubes here, so you just open it up, then the water comes down this tube and out there. So you've got running water, you can do dishes, get a drink, whatever, and then the water filters into this bucket, which goes down into these holes here, which goes into a funnel over here above the bed. I've built a bar.
This is like MacGyver. You guys remember that show called MacGyver? It's like MacGyver, the storage unit version.
And this is just to hold all my liquor and drinks and everything. But I've also got stuff at the back there behind the bed. So what I've done is I've built this little hinge here. This comes out, and then the hinge drops down. And then that can hold in place while you go and get whatever you need to from back there. Over here I've built a clothing rack, and this works just like it would in any closet. Put your clothes there, except I've included this little latch here on this string, so you can push the clothing further to the wall, giving you more space. These are all like Philips Hue lights, so you can just turn them on and off with either your smartphone app or this wireless switch here. And of course I do have my router there broadcasting my network, which that's all connected to. This is my new TV I just bought. It's a 4K TV.
So you guys see this? He even has internet.
And I've got it hooked up to my computer so I can game on it or watch movies or do anything like that. It's quite convenient living here, actually. I even have a paper towel holder. Like, I have all the amenities you'd find in an apartment, just in a very tiny space. And I built everything so I'm ready to access anything and I don't have to waste time. And the only real thing I don't have in here is a washer and dryer, which is not a problem.
Now, these are just two videos that I've shown you, but you can find several videos about this on YouTube. Also, there's many more on TikTok. There's also some from vets that are living in storage units. I've told you guys before, this country does not care about veterans, the way that they treat them, especially after they've been to war. But why is this happening, folks? Why are people living in storage units? I take it back to the same reason as why people were building tiny homes. Because the cost of living in this country, particularly for housing, is too much to bear. There was a gentleman back in the day, he had this saying, the rent is too damn high. Don't know what happened to Too High Guy. But he was right then and he's right now. The rent's even higher now, so much to the point where the eviction issue in this country has increased. And this is something I've been talking about for quite some time when people were saying, well, this was just an issue because of the pandemic. No. Evictions are still continuing to increase. And I want to go into this clip here. Evictions skyrocket as rising rents squeeze low-income Americans. Let's dive into this.
Now that the pandemic's renter protection programs have expired, eviction filing rates are soaring. Princeton University's eviction lab says that in some cities, the average weekly filings are more than 50% higher than they were before the pandemic. One reason is the rising rents and a shortage of affordable housing for those with the lowest incomes. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition says that to afford a modest two-bedroom apartment, someone working a 40-hour week needs to earn between $16 and $42 an hour. That's
pausing here. So we're going to pull up this report again. I've shown it on this show multiple times, but that cost of living report in reference to housing, right? So people, the average American, they're not making the wages that they need to make just to have, just adequate housing. We're not even talking about owning a home. We're talking about just renting an apartment.
Much higher than the minimum wage in most states. Diane Yantel is the CEO and president of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, which is an advocacy group. Diane, is this rebound or surge in evictions, was this inevitable once these protections went away, or is there something else going on, other factors going on?
Before the pandemic, we had about 10 million of the lowest income renters who were paying at least half of their very limited incomes towards rent just to keep a roof over their heads. And of course, when you have such limited income to begin with, you're always one unexpected bill or financial shock away from missing rent, facing eviction, and in worst cases, becoming homeless. But
let's talk about unexpected bills. Here are a few that happen to people. Your car breaks down. You need your car to get to work. Let's say you live in a city that doesn't have public transportation. I've lived in those places. What do? How are you going to get to work? Unexpected medical expenses. That happens to a lot of Americans, right? There are a lot of people, we talked about student loan debt, but there are a lot of people in this country that have medical debt that they still can't get out of. Anything could happen. Let's say you're a parent. So you have kids. Let's say something happens with your child. What do? Obviously, parents are going to put their kids first, right? So all it takes is one unexpected expense for a lot of Americans to end up behind on their rent. And let's be real, once you're behind, it's harder to catch up, right? Not everyone has family members that they can reach out to say, I'm going to be short on my rent this month. Can you help me? Some people are all alone. But we live in the wealthiest country in the world. This shouldn't even happen.
The federal government stepped in really in unprecedented ways and provided protections and resources that kept millions of renters stably housed who otherwise would have lost their homes. But just as those protections were expiring and those resources were depleted, renters were re-entering really a brutal housing market where rents were skyrocketing and costs across the board had increased, and the lowest income renters are being squeezed more than ever. I'm talking about people who make less than 30% of the area median income. So, for example, that's a family of four bringing in less than $25,000 in annual income, or it's an individual senior or a person with disabilities who has a limited $12,000 to $15,000 a year in income.
Let's pause here in reference to the people that have disabilities. So JB just said we pay over half of our income on rent in my house. My entire disability check is spent on rent alone. This is why I have a GoFundMe to help with living expenses. My rent went up 25% last year. So let's talk about this for an example, because a lot of times I think people forget about the disabled community. These are people that are living on a fixed income. There is no raise that they're waiting on. So they have a fixed income. Meanwhile, their rent continues to increase. That's not right. But this is the reality for people in this country. Notice that she said once those protections were lifted, so we can go back to the eviction moratorium, all of a sudden people found themselves in serious, dire situations. And so here we are. And this is what we were warning about when Biden wanted to lift the eviction moratorium. We're like, what's going to happen to all those people who are already behind on their rent? How are they going to catch up? What are they going to do? And then people point fingers at the landlord, and the landlord's like, look, I have a bill to pay too. So you get this constant cycle, and this should not be happening in this country in 2023.
So they have very little available to pay for rent and have enough money left over for all of life's other necessities. And it's people of color who are most impacted and most harmed by the housing market. Black, Latino, and Indigenous people are disproportionately extremely low-income renters due to decades of systemic racism and ongoing discrimination in many systems. And so they are disproportionately likely to be evicted or become homeless in our country.
And obviously becoming homeless has a big impact, but also even if they aren't evicted, just getting that eviction filing against them has an impact.
Yes, let's talk about that. So now you're kicked out, you have been evicted, and you have an eviction on your record. Now you run into another problem. It is going to be very difficult for you to rent another apartment. Let's say you do get money that comes your way and you're able, okay, I got 3 months worth. I'm going to try to find an apartment. You have an eviction on your record. It's difficult to rent an apartment when you have an eviction on your record, because the first thing landlords and property managers will see is you didn't pay your rent at the last place that you were at. Why should I let you rent here? People who end up falling into this situation, it's very scary because it's a little bit different, right? Like if you have credit card debt, let's say you didn't pay off a credit card, you have that on your credit report. That's one thing. But it's another thing when your credit report shows that you were evicted. Let's go on. She's going to talk a little bit about that.
That's exactly right. Just a single eviction filing on somebody's record can create really a spiraling down into poverty that becomes very difficult for that family to climb back out of. It becomes more difficult for them to be able to find decent apartments and landlords that will rent to them. So they often are led to communities with lower performing schools or higher crime rates, which has all sorts of associated costs and challenges for that family, for the community, and really for the country.
You talked about how the pandemic protections sort of protected against that shock, and it was the pandemic that was the shock. Could in any sense that be a model for safety net programs for renters who do get that shock because of a medical bill, because of some other factor?
Oh, absolutely. You know, the emergency rental assistance programs that were created during the pandemic are a success story. Congress provided $46.5 billion in emergency rental assistance. And with those funds, communities created over 500 programs across the country to quickly get cash into people's pockets to pay the rent and stay stably housed. So we absolutely should make this program permanent and permanently funded, keep this infrastructure that we built throughout the country, build off of these lessons that we learned, and continue to keep people stably housed into the future.
All right, let's come out here because so this woman here, she is actually part of the National Housing Income Coalition that we're going to talk about as well. But I want to mention something else. There seems to be a really big disconnect here about what people are actually earning with their paychecks and the cost of living in this country today. And I want to go to this segment here from NBC News. Now, this was a part of Meet the Press where these are everyday people trying to explain, look, I'm doing everything, or I did everything right, and I'm still struggling in this country.
Kanika Williams is a single mom of 4 boys living in Cleveland, Ohio. She has 3 part-time jobs, cleaning homes, delivering food with DoorDash, and sorting mail for UPS. She's active at her kids' schools, cooks them dinner every night, and stays present in their lives.
Pause right there. First problem I heard, she works 3 jobs. No one in this country should have to work 3 jobs. And she's a mother. Does everybody see the problem? Why are people having to work 3 jobs, 2 jobs? You should be able to live in this country with 1 job. So that's the first problem when I heard this story. Why is she working 3 jobs? Let's go on.
Being around my kids, that's like the number one. So my kids motivate me. I want us to have stuff. I want us to do stuff.
Kanika puts her life together like sections of a quilt, caring for her sons, making money, spending time with friends. Each piece is sewn together intentionally.
When I have a roof over my head, I know when my small necessary bills are paid, necessary meaning lights, water, gas, insurance, rent. I'm not talking about Netflix or any of those wanted things. Once I have those things taken care of, I have freedom.
Kanika has a medical technician degree, and the rise of gig work has given people like Kanika some level of autonomy. But she reminisces about how things used to be for previous generations. Her mother, Brenda, just retired from her decades-long job as a janitor at an elementary school.
I went to that school when I was in 1st grade. And that's where she's retiring from. So those 30-year jobs, those 40-year jobs are gone for us unless we start right now.
Between her gig work at $20 an hour and her UPS job at $16.50 an hour, both above Ohio minimum wage, she says she brings home roughly $1,500 a month.
Pause. $1,500 a month. When we look at this map, I'm going to show you, in a lot of these states, that's not even a 1-bedroom apartment. In a lot of states, that's not even, don't even try Boston. Don't even come here because that's not happening. And from what I've heard from some of my friends that live in North Carolina, that they're still down south. I've heard North Carolina has gotten that way now too. So just that alone, that's not enough for a 1-bedroom apartment in a lot of places in this country.
What is your definition of a living wage?
Being able to afford your bill, your monthly bills, being able to put a portion back for savings. And I think for me in my household, if I was to make $3,500 a month.
What would that extra money, what would that get you?
That'll get all bills paid, a little bit in the bank, and maybe that oil change I may need it, you know?
Let's pause there, and then we're just going to come out for just a second. Think about what she just said. That means all bills are paid. Maybe I can put a little bit extra in the bank. So people who are making this type of income, they have no savings. So if you don't have savings and you have an unexpected expense, which we talked about earlier, what do you do? And this is where some people will go towards credit cards. They'll use those. By the way, word of advice, never use credit cards to pay for bills if you can help it. They'll use their credit cards to pay the light bill, to pay for bills. Next thing you know, the credit card is maxed out. And then this is where some people will fall even further into debt. They will get another credit card to pay off the credit card that's maxed out. Don't do that either. Just letting you know. Or people will go to a payday loan place. Don't do those either. All of these things are meant to keep you in debt, not to get you ahead. Payday loan. These places are just scams. You go in, yes, they give you an advance. They charge you more than you're borrowing, obviously. But then when you're paid again, you have to go and pay that back. Plus, you still got to pay your bills. Some people have made a habit of going to payday loan places because of that, because they're still trying to catch up. Huge scam. I call them predatory lenders. Now let's go to this section here about income growth. This piece is important.
Has not kept pace with labor productivity, so workers are more efficient, but they have less to show for it, studies have found. Since 1980, most American workers have seen modest income growth, but income for the top 1% has grown much faster.
Everybody who works for a living deserves to be paid a wage that honors the value of the work that they're doing and meets the cost of living.
Michael Shields is a researcher for Policy Matters Ohio, a liberal nonprofit economic policy institute.
For the last several decades, there's been a real disconnect between how much wealth working people are producing and what's being reflected in their pay.
What do you attribute that to?
I think it comes down to power. Larger share of all of the wealth that's produced in our economy is being consolidated by the very wealthy and by corporations as well. Working people are being less successful than they have in the past in bargaining for their share of the wealth that they make possible.
Let's rephrase that. Working people are being exploited. This is what happens in a capitalist system. The people at the top take a lot of money and the people at the bottom get very little. This is what happens. Now, I want to show you something. We're going to pull up that report because this one really irks my nerve. Now, this is the cost of living report for 2023. Every year, this organization, the NLIHC, releases a report every year. This year, how much do you need to earn to afford a modest apartment in your state? So 2-bedroom apartment is what they go by, and you click on each state and you can actually see what a 1-bedroom is as well. I want you guys to see something. First of all, a lot of people think it's just the blue states. So we're going to go ahead and debunk that myth. Let's go to Florida. Now, the states that are dark blue, these are the states that are more expensive. Florida's a red state. Don't come at me and tell me it's a swing state. It's not swing. Florida is a red state. Now, Florida is 11th in the highest housing wage in this country. This is the state that a lot of people from the Northeast would move to retire because it was cheaper to live. Not anymore, son. In Florida, you need to earn $30.59 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. If you make minimum wage, you need to work 111 hours a week. This is what people need to see. Ron DeSantis, hello, paging Ron DeSantis. What happened to your state? Florida. Alaska. Another red state, 18th highest housing wage in the country. You need to make $26.32 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental in Alaska. If you make minimum wage, you need to work 97 hours a week. I think we all know Hawaii is number one. And we're going to go to Hawaii because I want to point something out. second highest housing wage in the nation. You need to make $41.83 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental home in Hawaii. If you make minimum wage, you have to work 139 hours a week. Now, what just happened in Hawaii? The fires, right? So this foundation that Oprah and The Rock started, where they wanted to give people $1,200 a month, you see why that's problematic? Let's go on. We'll pick out a couple of other ones. Of course, California would be first, excuse me. By the way, just remember this, because they're already saying Gavin Newsom could be someone that they swoop in for Joe Biden. Just remember where Gavin Newsom is coming from. California is number one in the highest housing wage in this country. $42.25 an hour is what you need to earn to afford a 2-bedroom rental. If you make minimum wage, you need to work 109 hours a week. So remember that when people start to brag about Gavin Newsom. This is why people are struggling in this. This is why people are living in storage units, building tiny homes. This is what this country has come to. Even Colorado, man. Colorado is 8th highest housing wage. You need to make $32.13 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental home. If you're minimum wage, if you make minimum wage, you need to work 94 hours a week. Let's go to one that you might not think of. I was actually surprised to see this one. Nevada. Even Nevada's in the top 20, 15th in highest housing wage. You need to make $27.99 per hour to afford a 2-bedroom. If you make minimum wage, you need to work 100 hours a week. We'll check out Massachusetts. Of course, we would be here. We're third. I told you guys it's expensive here. I'm not kidding. Massachusetts, you need to earn $41.64 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental. If you make minimum wage, you have to work 111 hours a week. And if you click on the more info piece for each state, you'll see what's happening here. We have a $15 minimum wage. So you see, even with that fight for that $15 minimum wage, that's not even half of what you need to earn to make a living here in Massachusetts. So it's just, these are things to look at. Affordable rent for low-income households. You see this? Fair market rent, 1-bedroom fair market rent, $1,772 a month on average. I would argue it's even higher than that based on what I've seen. 2-bedroom, $2,165 a month. And I would argue that is way higher than that based on what I've seen, but I'm also referring to the Boston area. Now, what's important to note as well, look how many people are renting. 38% renters. We go down here. I want to show you another thing as well. Here we go. Occupations. Look at the occupations, guys. There's over 69,000 people in Massachusetts that are cashiers. There's over 86,000 that are food and service workers. You see, this is, by the way, this is the norm. Cashiers, food service workers, and don't forget retail, over 81,000. This is the norm across the United States. The average American doesn't have a desk job. The average American doesn't have a college degree. They don't have a master's. They don't have a PhD. The average American is working retail, food and service, or cashier. And they expect you can't buy a home off the... These are the things I want people to see. Eric, I think, put the link to this in the chat so you guys can check this out on your own. You can look at your own state. But there's a lot to see here. Now, I want to show you something because we're going to switch this up tonight. A lot of people like to say this quote. We're going to change it. John F. Kennedy, this famous quote, "My fellow Americans, Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. You remember that quote? Some of you have probably heard it in school, right? That quote right there. John F. Kennedy said this quote in 1961. During that time, it made sense. The economy was in a completely different place. When JFK said that quote, that was during a time where people could have one income in the household, where one spouse could stay at home with the kids and not have to pay for daycare, where you could have one income and buy a home. Those days, when JFK said that, college graduates didn't have to struggle with enormous amounts of student loan debt for jobs that were eventually overtaken by AI and technology. These are things you got to think about. A lot of people they want to say this quote all big and proud, and you forget the time period. That was 1961. That was during a time when people can actually cook a home cooked family meal every night. When the wife had time to do that because she wasn't trying to work two jobs and take care of the kids at the same time. These are things we got to talk about because we are living in a different day. This was during a time, if I remember correctly, this is before super PACs. Before all these politicians were bought by corporations in the military industrial complex. So just remind people of that when they repeat that quote from JFK. It is now 2023. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to flip this quote from JFK and we're going to phrase it as this. Ask not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you. Because now is a different time. Now we have people that are homeless, enormous amounts of people that are homeless, people living in tent communities. Was this happening in 1961? People graduating from college with enormous amounts of student loan debt, as I mentioned. We have people that are losing what could be 30-year careers to a gig economy that doesn't want to pay people health care benefits. So we're changing that on this show. And you pass this on to your friends because I hear too many people, they like to say, John F. Kennedy said, that was 1961, boo. And we need to talk about all the things that were different in 1961 compared to today. We should be ahead of where people were in 1961 economically in this country. You shouldn't have to sit up here and struggle with your finances this many decades later. But that's what people are doing. We have advanced technology. We have advanced education. And people are struggling more now than they were back then. Let's talk about the African American community. Financially, African Americans were better off then than they are now. So you can't tell me that the system has not changed. We have allowed billionaires to buy up single family homes, increase the prices, so even these kids that are graduating with degrees can't afford a down payment for a home. In 1961, there was no BlackRock, boo. Think about that. In 1961, we didn't have Elon Musk and his Tesla and all of that jazz. In 1961, we didn't have a Jeff Bezos that owned Amazon and bought other companies to go along with it. What I'm trying to get to is we had less billionaires. That's why people are in the conditions that they're in. That's why people are struggling. And it's a damn shame. It makes you wonder what people like JFK would say if he were alive today. Let's take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. I think that's from Roger. Yeah. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Never forget the reason why inflation is so high was because at the beginning of the year, Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, made it very clear when getting berated by Senator Warren that the only reason he's hiking up interest rates is to hurt working people because working people have too much leverage and they are demanding too much or are refusing to go back to work. In the Fed, replace with public banks. I screenshot each state to highlight in the lower left-hand corner of each state, showing you the more expensive jurisdictions. Thank you for that. Here is the link to the income inequality states in order. Scroll down the chart, then within the chart, scroll within the chart. Thank you for that as well. Oops, here it is. If you can copy and paste that, Eric, I can go ahead and pull that up while I go to the other comments here on YouTube. We got to have a discussion tonight because I'm here to tell you, I'm tired of seeing people on the street. I'm tired of seeing people struggling. And we just gave more billions to Ukraine. Well, we're going to get into that story next. Thank you, Zach, for the super chat. Garland Nixon always said, defy logic if RFK didn't exit. Thank you, David. People need houses. A home is abstract. Carlin. How to Sober says Sabby Sabs 1-bedroom apartments in the whole Orlando, Florida are now $1,800. Isn't this insane? Monarch says, it is clever, Sabby, but what happens if one day the storage unit landlords decides, hey, you can't do that? Is there even enough indoor space if more people copy this guy's idea? I wonder. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. They can find out. It is a risk that you take. Thank you, Oz. Bidenomics working for America, right, Oz? Thank you, Roger. Remember, you got the screenshots of PDF each state. Yes, thank you. I'll pull it up in just a second. Delthea said, and let's not forget your credit score. Not only can it keep you out of housing, it can keep you out of employment. Yes, ma'am. Especially if you're applying for any type of financial position. Thank you, Duckzilla. I've heard, at least here in Western Montana, that landlords are starting to sit on empty apartments and might have no choice but to lower the rent. Boom. That's good news. And thank you, duly noted. Ask what your representatives are doing for themselves with your country. RFK Jr. had his life threatened and not a peep from Biden and hardly a blip on MSM. That's on purpose. We're going to talk about that as well tonight as well. That's on purpose. Let's go ahead and pull this up. This is what Roger was referring to. Income inequality by state. I knew we would be on here. Massachusetts. Yeah. So there's a legend here, right? So if you see, actually, I could just do it like this. There we go. Income inequality by state. Washington, D.C., which is a district, 53%. New York, 51%. Connecticut, 50%. Louisiana, which is one of the states that has a lower cost of living, 50%. I'm wondering how much Hurricane Katrina has to do with that. California, 49%. Florida, 49%. All of these, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, West Virginia, 49%. Now, West Virginia is one of the poorest states in the country. This is what we're dealing with, guys. You see this? Income inequality. Now, I can tell you, for example, Massachusetts, I knew about our income inequality, but there are enormous people with enormous amounts of wealth here. And there is this giant gap between all of the millionaires that live in this state and the people who are at the bottom. The middle class is slowly being erased. Something to think about. That is the cost of living housing report for 2023. All right, guys. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Jimmy McMillan for New York governor. The rent is too darn high. That's the guy. Push CBI amendments, outlaw private equity from owning housing to stop them from driving up rent prices. This is what we're going to have to do. And thank you, Kilo. I can't believe no one pressed KGP about RFK Jr.'s assassination threat today at the briefing. Cowards. Yeah, we'll get into all of that. I think the big thing is a lot of people have already been told, don't even mention it. Don't even bring him up. Speaking of money, we're going to move on to this story about Zelensky and Kevin McCarthy, and let's throw in Rand Paul as well. So Joe Biden has already decided that he is going to send more money to Ukraine. So for those who are not aware, Zelensky was here visiting again in DC. Isn't it interesting how you can just come to someone's country and start making demands? You know, it's like, that's just like if I went to your house and I started making demands to you and telling you this is how it's going to be. That's what it feels like. Let's get started with this report here. Now, this is from Jake Sullivan. He's the White House National Security Advisor, announcing that Biden is going to give more money to Ukraine. And then we'll get into this whole riff about the government shutdown and Kevin McCarthy and Rand Paul.
Values that the American people hold so dear. Following up on that speech at the UN earlier this week, today President Biden is hosting President Zelensky of Ukraine here at the White House, where he will emphasize the continued need for the American people to step up and support Ukraine as they battle on the front lines of the free world. Today's meeting will be the 6th in-person meeting between President Biden and President Zelensky, and it's President Zelensky's 3rd visit to the White House during the Biden administration. Of course, they have talked many times over the course of the past year and a half by phone, on video, and our teams are in constant daily communication. This meeting comes at a significant moment as Ukrainian forces continue to make progress in their counteroffensive, and just after Russia launched yet another brutal wave of airstrikes against five cities in Ukraine that hit critical civilian infrastructure and knocked out power for many people in many different parts of the country. To help defend against assaults like this one, assaults from the air, President Biden will announce a new package of military assistance today that includes significant air defense capabilities to help Ukraine protect its people. These capabilities will help Ukraine harden its defenses ahead of what is likely to be a tough winter, filled with renewed Russian attacks on Ukrainian critical infrastructure to try to deprive innocent people of necessities like heat and electricity.
The best way for Ukraine to protect the people in their country is to end the war. No more civilian casualties. You don't protect the people in your country by having the U.S. government send weapons that's going to poison them and cause birth defects.
Because President Putin cannot achieve his objectives on the battlefield, he is reduced to and is resorting to attacks that are intended to plunge ordinary people's lives into cold and darkness. And we are going to do everything working with the Ukrainians to make that task more and more difficult for Russia to be able to pull off.
Let me tell you something, people. Even if the electricity attack didn't happen, they were going to give Zelensky this money anyway. They were going to give him the money regardless if this happened or not. This is just another reason for them to say, this is why we have to give them money this time. Because they know people are starting to become angry.
The package the president will announce today will also include weapons and equipment to help Ukraine maintain its momentum in the counteroffensive. That includes additional ammunition for U.S.-provided HIMARS systems, anti-armor capabilities, artillery ammunition, and more DPICMs, which have helped Ukraine make gains and crucially also helped Ukraine defend against counterattacks. President Biden and President Zelensky will also discuss our joint efforts to support Ukraine's economic recovery, and he will introduce a special representative for Ukraine's economic recovery, Penny Pritzker, who will focus on engaging the private sector, partner countries, and Ukrainian counterparts to generate international investment in Ukraine and work with Ukraine to make the reforms necessary to improve Ukraine's business climate.
To improve Ukraine's business climate. You guys hear this?
Biden, of course, is also looking forward to hear directly from President Zelensky in person his perspective on the war and the road ahead and all of the more specific operational issues that have been a feature of all of their conversations over the course of the past year and a half. Above all, though, President Biden wants to use today to reaffirm his commitment, this administration's commitment, this country's commitment to continuing to lead the world in support of Ukraine for as long as it takes. And that's what he intends to do today. And with that, I look forward to taking your questions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, that is Jake Sullivan there. So he was responding, letting everybody know what the plan was. So he was warning everyone ahead of time that Joe Biden was going to go ahead and approve another package for Ukraine. Now, there has been strong opposition towards this coming from Kevin McCarthy and Rand Paul, to name a few. Now, Kevin McCarthy, obviously, there's this debate over the budget, and Kevin McCarthy feels that this is too much. This is enough. We need to not give them any more money. So there's a lot of tense feelings right now in DC. If they do not reach an agreement on the budget, we could be looking at another government shutdown. And I say another just to remind you, it's not like this has not happened before. But when that does happen, that does mean that certain people that have certain government jobs would not be able to go to work, meaning they're not going to get paid as well. So Kevin McCarthy actually had, is this the interview? Yeah. Oh, ABC News. ABC News had a discussion about the situation with Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz as well. Matt Gaetz has been putting a lot of pressure on Kevin McCarthy. Basically, some of these members of the Freedom Caucus, they've actually been doing what we wanted the squad to do to establishment Democrats in DC. So I want to get into this particular clip here because there's something that Kevin McCarthy says here that I kind of was just like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's go ahead and get into this.
Potential government shutdown. The clock is ticking down. Another setback for Speaker McCarthy. Hardline Republicans blocked a defense spending bill from advancing as McCarthy struggles to get enough votes from his own party. Senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott is on Capitol Hill with the latest. Good morning, Rachel.
George, good morning. And this was a major defeat for House Republicans overnight. They couldn't even get enough votes to pass their own defense spending bill, raising even more questions about whether Speaker McCarthy can get the votes to avoid a government shutdown. This morning, with the clock ticking, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy facing increasing pressure to unite his party and avert a government shutdown.
I don't think it's right that government shuts down, and that's why I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen.
But the rebellion within his own ranks leaves McCarthy in a perilous situation.
This could have been the same rebellion that the squad could have done to people like Nancy Pelosi or Hakeem Jeffries.
Some even calling him a weak speaker, threatening to oust him.
Kevin McCarthy would never put anything above his own power and his own ambition. He's not just an ineffective leader, but a morally bankrupt one.
It's the biggest test for the speaker since the debt ceiling showdown, with members of his own caucus demanding deeper spending cuts and stricter border policies, both non-starters for the Democrats in the Senate.
Slapdash, because it's not a serious proposal for avoiding a shutdown.
The Republican proposal doesn't include any of the $24 billion the White House is requesting for Ukraine. McCarthy preparing to meet with Zelensky tomorrow, making no promises.
Will you commit to another round of funding for Ukraine?
Is Zelensky elected to Congress?
That part right there. First time I found myself agreeing with Kevin McCarthy. This part right here. That's the question we all need to start asking.
Promises.
Will you commit to another round of funding for Ukraine?
Is Zelensky elected to Congress? Is he our president? I don't think I have to commit anything.
If the government...
We need to ask that question. Is Zelensky elected to Congress? This button right here, it's starting to really tick some people off. And that's what I said earlier. How dare he? How you just gonna come to someone else's country and start making demands? You need to give me this money. It's not enough. It's not enough. And we're gonna get to Cy Hirsch's article where he points out that the only thing that's keeping this war going is Zelensky. Let's continue.
Does shut down, more than 4 million government workers could lose pay, including some military troops and members of law enforcement. Money would run out for disaster relief, and 10,000 children would lose access to Head Start. With time.
No, they would not. Let's go back to this. I want to go ahead and debunk something here because I want to show you how they try to play the American people.
Down, more than 4 million government workers could lose pay, including some military troops and members of law enforcement. Money would run out for disaster relief, and 10,000 children would lose access to Head Start.
Pause. Disaster relief and Head Start. Okay. They said money would run out. Nah. Because let me tell you how this is BS. Money doesn't run out. We have an $865 billion defense budget. There's plenty of money. They just don't want to use the money for the people. They want to use the money for the military industrial complex. But mainstream media is never going to tell you that.
And would lose access to Head Start. With time running out, some Republicans now begging the hard right members of their party to reverse course.
We came here and we took an oath when the 118th Congress began to do the people's work and to govern. And right now, we have certain individuals holding that work hostage.
So Congress has just 11 days to avoid a government shutdown. Pretty much every Democrat and Republican here on Capitol Hill wants to avoid this, but they cannot figure out a solution on just how to do it, George.
Okay, Rachel, thanks. Also today, Attorney General Merrick Garland on Capitol Hill.
No one cares about Merrick Garland. Now I want to move on to this next piece here. Rand Paul has been very vocal that he does not want to give any more money to Ukraine. And it always takes, and you got to be careful with this too, because this is what Dr. Shiva was referring to when he said that they create our own heroes. That's why I tell you, don't look at these people as heroes. Not Rand Paul, not Bernie Sanders, none of them. These people are doing what they're supposed to do to give us the impression, the illusion that we do have a hero in there, but we really don't. All these people are bought and paid for. But that being said, he is willing to disagree with the funding in reference to Ukraine. So let's go ahead and bring up this clip here. People have had enough.
There's also this incredible story about an American journalist, Gonzalo Lira. He's reportedly right now in prison in Ukraine on allegations of spreading Russian propaganda. I don't understand this, that Joe Biden could approve $113 billion of money to Ukraine, and yet he has not tried to get this American journalist out of prison there. How is that possible?
It's even worse than that, Maria. They've canceled the elections. What kind of democracy has no election? So next year, Zelensky said he's not going to have an election because it would be inconvenient during the war and would be expensive. Well, the thing is, if you don't have elections, why in the world would we be supporting a country that's not a democracy?
Didn't think I would agree with Rand Paul, but that is a question we all need to ask. Zelensky has made the decision not to have elections in Ukraine. That's not democracy. So to his point, why is the U.S. government supporting a country that doesn't have democracy? Isn't that something that they all care about? Doesn't like Ro Khanna and all of these other, dim politicians that brag and say we need to protect our democracy, isn't like that supposed to be their thing? So why are we supporting a country that no longer has a democracy, people? Let's continue.
They've banned the political parties. They've invaded churches. They've arrested priests. So, no, it isn't a democracy. It's a corrupt regime. And are the Russians any better? No, the Russians are worse. But at the same time, we don't always have to pick some side to be on. But the ultimate reason I'm against this is we don't have the money. And when we borrow more money, it leads to more inflation, leads to more likelihood of recession in our country. And so we just can't keep doing it.
Now, I have to disagree with him when he says, again, we don't have the money. You know, MMT, modern monetary theory, tells us that that is not true. The government prints money. But to that point there, notice he called them corrupt. That's what we got to do. Just call it what it is. It's corruption. Now, speaking of corrupt, Zelensky, recently in this interview, MSNBC, he is trying to warn people. He said this could be a threat of World War III. He said Putin will be the cause of the World War III. He's the threat. But when we get to this article from Cy Hirsch, you will see that it is Zelensky who's keeping the war continuing. They've already lost. There's no winning this. They've already lost. And here he comes to DC and asks for more money. More money for what? Let's get into this.
Grim warning there from Ukraine's President Zelensky on accused war criminal Russian President Putin's strategy to simply wait it out, wait for more political instability right here in the U.S. as he looks to advance his own interests while being aided in the public information and propaganda space by a high-profile snub from the top Republican in the House. Kevin, sorry I gave away my speakership to Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mccarthy. Politico reports that Mccarthy and Zelensky will not have a one-on-one meeting when the Ukrainian president comes to Washington, D.C. this week, and offers some reporting on why that is. Politico reports this, quote, the notion of moving any Ukraine aid has appeared on the litany of grievances the hard right is using to threaten McCarthy's speakership. And even Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of McCarthy's top allies on the right, told Playbook recently that no amount of border funding could compensate for another injection of U.S. taxpayer money overseas.
So you see what's happening here? You have members of the Freedom Caucus threatening Kevin McCarthy's speakership if he agrees to this funding for Ukraine. This is exactly what the squad should have done. And another thing, we need to wait and see when they finally do the vote. We need to wait and see how the squad members vote on this round of funding to Ukraine too, by the way. So they basically they're holding Kevin McCarthy hostage, which is exactly what the squad could have done in reference to Nancy Pelosi and can do in reference to Hakeem Jeffries. Because say what you want about them, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they don't give a fuck. And apparently their constituents seem to be happy with what they're doing.
And calling the battle against Russia's invasion, quote, a war that should be over. McCarthy this afternoon confirmed that when he does see President Zelensky on Thursday, it will be in a group setting, a bipartisan group, that the GOP position on aid for a U.S. ally in a hot war with Russia is being driven by Marjorie Taylor Greene is only the second most outrageous part of this story. Here's Zelensky on the stakes of withdrawing U.S. support.
I just think they're not supporting only Ukraine alone. If Ukraine falls, Putin will surely go further. What will the United States of America do when Putin reaches the Baltic states?
Well, we wouldn't have to worry about this if you guys would have just accepted the negotiation, the peace agreement in the very beginning. We wouldn't even be in this situation. You know, just
when he reaches the Polish border, he will. This is a lot of money. We have a lot of gratitude. What else must Ukraine do for everyone to measure our huge gratitude? We are dying in this war. Look, if Ukraine falls, what will happen in 10 years? Just think about it. If the Russians reach Poland, what's next? A third world war?
We are already the brink of the Third World War. That happened when you guys decided not to accept the peace negotiation. It just, oh, and by the way, I thought this guy spoke English. No, like last time he was here in DC, he was speaking English. Now he no speak. I don't think this guy is who he says he is either. I feel like this guy is corrupt. Where is all this money going? How do we know that this is all being used in the places that it's supposed to be used? If we've given you billions and billions and billions of dollars and you still losing now, it's time to hang it up, bro. It's time to hang it up.
But not even the very real threat of a third world war could stop the GOP frontrunner Donald Trump from gushing when he heard about Vladimir Putin's warm fuzzies for him. Trump telling NBC News this, quote, "Well, I like that he said that because that means what I'm saying is right." Republican Party leaders in the U.S. bending to Putin as United States ally and Democratic leader of Ukraine, President Zelensky prepares to make a personal appeal before the United Nations General Assembly here in New York tomorrow for our continued support is where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Retired four-star Army General and MSNBC military analyst Barry Mccarthy joins us. Joining me at the table, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California is here, and writer-at-large for The Bulwark and MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller is here. Congressman, I start with you. It's embarrassing, right? It's not just the Marjorie Taylor Greene keeping Kevin McCarthy from pledging ongoing support for an ally in the region. It's at the same time Trump playing coochie-coochie-coo with Putin over his compliments in an interview.
This woman has no energy. I don't know how she got this job. She must have known someone. But the point that I want to make is this. No, it's not embarrassing. It's not embarrassing to push back on the Speaker of the House. What's embarrassing is that we keep giving billions and billions of dollars to this guy. That's what's embarrassing. I'm sorry. I don't know who hired this woman.
When you see Zelensky, what do you say about that?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that, the person who's second in line to the presidency has reduced himself to such a weak, pathetic position. We're talking about, a potential World War III, and the line for freedom is in Ukraine, and the tip of the spear is what we're doing to help Ukraine. So McCarthy leads a Putin bloc in Congress. And Donald Trump, by the way, when he says, I'll end this conflict within 24 hours, Vladimir Putin hears two things. One, I should stay in this conflict until, at least the next presidential election. And he's got the men and the ability to just grind it out. And so there'll be more, dead children because Putin's going to stay in. And two,
let me pause there. First of all, Eric Swalwell, I can't believe this guy ran for president. But two, notice how he uses the children trope. There would be more dead children. Is that not an issue with the uranium shells that they've chosen to send over to Ukraine that causes cancer and birth defects? Do you still care about those children in reference to that? He says they're so predictable. So predictable. The women, the children. We would not be in this situation if it was not for the rejection of the peace agreement in the very beginning. NATO escalated this war. That is why we are on the brink of a World War III. This is why we call for peace. And anyone with a sound mind would be calling for peace right now. No one wants escalation. Let's get back to these things. Who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? Let's think about what we're really supposed to believe here. We're really supposed to believe that Russia destroyed their own pipeline? And if it wasn't for that article and that reporting by the Gray Zone where they discovered that boot down at the bottom of the ocean, would the Washington Post have written that article that said, oh, it looks like it could have been U.S. Navy or Ukraine that actually blew up this pipeline? No, really? I can't believe this guy ran for president.
I know how to get Donald Trump elected because I helped him do it last time. If Kevin McCarthy and his conference are so hell-bent on going after China, which really does unite the Congress, the best way to keep China out of Taiwan is to show strength in Ukraine. If we pull out of Ukraine, not only could we see further losses in Europe, Xi and China would certainly see a green light to invade Taiwan. And then that's a real World War III scenario.
I'm just going to say this for the 20th time. How can you invade a region that is a part of your country? It's just like, I'll say it again. Taiwan is a part of China.
So I guess my question is, if we know what Putin was willing to do to help a reality TV star win in 2016 because he feared a Hillary Clinton presidency, and we know how willing Trump was to publicly embrace it, Putin, if you're Russia, if you're listening. We also know that this time the stakes are so much higher for each of them. Trump is running to stay out of jail, and Putin is running to prevail in a hot war against America's allies. Do you worry about a failure of imagination to protect the country against what those two will do together?
We were too late to call out the disinformation, the hacking, the leaking, the dumping campaign that Putin led in 2016. And I faulted, the Obama administration in many ways for holding back because they heard Donald Trump say the election was going to be rigged, and they felt like if they called Russia out, it would validate Trump's concerns about a rigged election. We can't do that. We need to call out Russia every time we see it. And we also need to make sure that the private sector, social media companies, are also called out if their platforms are being used to launder Russian disinformation to get a preferred candidate in a presidential election.
Ding, 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 ding. I hope everybody heard that part. That was the part I wanted you to hear. There is Eric Swalwell, who is a Democrat, saying that we need to monitor these social media companies too. Way to say the quiet part out loud, Eric. Way to say the quiet part out loud. Now, Cy Hirsch dropped this article this morning, and I want to tell you what's really happening in Ukraine. Zelensky's bad moment. The Ukrainian leader resorts to lies and threats at the tail end of a failing counter-offensive. We're not going to read the entire article because this is one of the paid articles, but I'm just going to go right to the, I got to sign in again? I got to sign in. Hold on. Eric, you're going to have to sign out or, switch accounts. There we go. Sorry, guys. I thought I had this up. There we go. Whee! All right. I don't know what just happened there. Let me just switch my account. There we go. All right. And it says go to my email. I hate you have to do this double verification stuff. See the number that we sent to your email. And I'm like, bruh. Okay. There we go. Thank you. All right. We'll try this again. I'll just do it over here. Should take me there. Okay, I'll have to do it. I'll have to share my screen to do it. Sorry, Eric. It's just because it's a paid one. That's how it is. Okay, so let's get back into this article. Zelensky's bad moment. So I'm just going to put this up here. And I'm going to make it larger. All right. Zelensky's bad moment. Listen to this. There are significant elements in American intelligence community relying on field reports and technical intelligence who believe that the demoralized Ukraine army has given up on the possibility of overcoming the heavily mined three-tier Russian defense lines and taking the war to Crimea and the 4 oblasts seized and annexed by Russia. The reality is that Zelensky's battered army no longer has any chance of a victory. See, this is the stuff you got to hear. The war continues, I've been told by an official with access to current intelligence, because Zelensky insists that it must. There is no discussion in his headquarters or in the Biden White House of a ceasefire, and no interest in talks that could lead to an end to the slaughter. It's all lies, the official said, speaking of the Ukrainian claims of the incremental progress in the offensive that has suffered staggering losses while gaining ground in a few scattered areas that the Ukrainian military measures in meters per week. Let's be clear, the official said. Putin did a stupid and self-destructive act in starting the war. He thought he had a magical power and that all that he wanted was going to work out. Russia's initial attack, the official added, was poorly planned, understaffed, and led to unnecessary losses. He was lied to by his generals and began the war with no logistics, no way of resupplying his troops. Many of the offending generals were summarily dismissed. Now let's go here. I'm going to jump to this part right here. There were some early Ukrainian penetrations in the opening days of the June offensive, the official said, at or near the heavily trapped first of Russia's 3 formidable concrete barriers of defense. And the Russians retreated to succor them in, and they all got killed after weeks of high casualties and little progress, along with horrific losses to tanks and armored vehicles. Major elements of the Ukrainian army, without declaring so, virtually canceled the offensive. The 2 villages that the Ukrainian army recently claimed as captured are so tiny that they couldn't fit between the 2 Burmashov signs, referring to billboards that seemed to be on every American highway after World War II. Let's scoot down here. Just going to jump ahead here. I have reported for many weeks on long-standing disagreement between the CIA and other elements of the intelligence community on the prognosis of the current war in Ukraine. CIA analysts have consistently been far more skeptical than their counterparts at the Defense Intelligence Agency on the prospect for Ukraine's success. The American media has ignored the dispute, but the London headquartered economists, whose well-informed reporters do not get bylines, has not. One sign of the internal tension inside the American community emerged in the magazine's September 9 edition when Trent Mall, the DIA's director of analysis, gave an extraordinary on-the-record interview to The Economist in which he defended his agency's optimistic reporting on the Ukraine war and its troubled counteroffensive. Let's go down here. I just want to jump forward. President Biden, in his earlier speech to the General Assembly, did not deal with Ukraine's perilous position in the war with Russia, but renewed his resounding support for Ukraine and insisted that Russia alone bears responsibility for this war, ignoring, as the leaders of many developing nations do not, 3 decades of NATO expansion to the east after and the Obama administration's covert involvement in the overthrow of a pro-Russian government in Ukraine in 2014. The president may be right on the merits, but the rest of the world remembers, as this White House seems not to, that it was America that chose to make war in Iraq and Afghanistan with little regard for the merits of its justification for doing so. Meanwhile, a relentless Zelensky in an interview last week with a fawning correspondent of 60 Minutes, once the pinnacle of aggressive American journalism, depicted Putin as another Hitler and falsely insisted that Ukraine had the initiative in its current faltering war with Russia. And it goes into that interview. I want to jump ahead here. And this is what I want to highlight. The truth is, if the Ukrainian army is ordered to continue the offensive, the army would mutiny. The soldiers aren't willing to die anymore. But this doesn't fit the BS that is being authored by the Biden White House. This part right here, I also want to highlight for you. The war is over. Russia has won. There is no Ukrainian offensive anymore, but the Biden White House and the American media have to keep the lie going. Cy Hirsch, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they don't want you to see. That's what they don't want you to know. Now, unfortunately, that article that I was just reading, you have to pay for that article. When I opened it up on Type VNC, you'll get like the snippet. If you look for Seymour Hirsch on Substack, you'll get the intro, but you won't be able to see the entire article. So I am one of the paid subscribers. So that's why I did want to make sure I did read that to you guys, because I wanted you to get that information. So that it's already over, guys. But he's still coming here asking for money. Everybody need to hear that. Go to some of the comments here in the chat. And Eric, whenever you're ready, we can pull up part 2 of Type VNC. Thank you, Zach. All the advocacy groups end up like vampires, preying on the system and dissuading change. Contrast that with getting money direct to the people. Thank you, Snork. When my mom met Ted Kennedy, SS checked for bomb. Who's SS? You have to tell me. Shout out to Brent Yo Indo for becoming a Sabby member. Give Brent a big whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Thank you, M. Smith. He's making demands because he sold out his people. Thank you, EMK. Bill Clinton got the media ownership rules changed, and Obama gave us the Indefinite Detention Act. My house cleaning list and anger are growing. Thank you, Brent. Hey, Sabby, you, RBN, and Do Dissidents be my favorite reporting. It's a comfort hearing sane takes on all the madness. Thanks, yo. You are welcome, yo. Thank you, Zach. That pressure on Kevin's face could have been on Pelosi. Exactly. Thanks, Marvin. Zell, push domino theory, play out Tool from Nam era. Thank you, Sparky. Make Ukraine Russia again. Don't even leave a patch called Ukraine, lest it remain a BlackRock, NATO, and carpetbagger playground and money laundry. Thank you, Zach. That's Bush old press sanctuary. Sorry. Oh, secretary. Sorry, secretary. And thank you, David. Ukraine is the sacrificial lamb at the MIC altar. There you go. Thank you so much for that. We're going to go into the story here about RFK Jr. Now, when RFK Jr. first announced his presidential race, I said from day one, he should not run in the Democratic Party. He should be running as an independent or third party. Since then, RFK Jr. has started to see some of the way that the DNC or the Democratic Party in general will change the rules on you just because they feel like it. They don't necessarily have to have a reason. So one of the things we discussed over a week ago was that they did already start to change the rules in reference to New Hampshire and Iowa and potentially Georgia as well, where they're making it so that if RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson actually want to get delegates in New Hampshire and Iowa, they would have to get at least 80%. If they don't get at least 80%, their delegates go to Joe Biden. By the way, as you know, Joe Biden does not have to get 80%. Of course, right? So he's been speaking out a little bit more forcefully now and actually teasing the possibility of leaving the Democratic Party and running as an independent or third party. Now, I want to start with this clip from his campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, complaining about some of the things they've been dealing with with the DNC, particularly one issue in particular, which is Secret Service protection. So RFK Jr. has already been threatened, apparently. And as a presidential candidate, you do have the opportunity to have Secret Service, and the Biden administration is not willing to give that to RFK Jr. Let's get started with this clip here from Case Study QB with Dennis Kucinich.
With that, we bring in RFK Jr.'s campaign manager, former Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich. Great to have you with us, Dennis. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Martha.
I want to pick up on the tail end of Mike's reporting there, because it raises this question. Given the Kennedy family history, given the request for protection, now given this threat by this person pretending to be a U.S. Marshal, do you believe that the Biden administration is not acting on this out of a political drive?
Well, I don't think there's any question that this is a political decision. President Biden has it within his power to direct the Secret Service to protect Mr. Kennedy. He has chosen so far not to do that. We have appealed to him. I sent a letter this morning, once again, asking him in the name of fairness, in the name of not just protecting Mr. Kennedy, but protecting everyone around him, protecting the political process itself.
Let's stop here already. Now, Dennis Kucinich, having been a previous member of Congress, Dennis Kucinich knows a strongly worded letter isn't going to do anything. Like, you guys got to know, he knows this isn't going to. I wrote a letter. They are doing this because they don't want RFK Jr. there at all. They don't want any of these people around. They don't want RFK Jr. They don't want Marianne Williamson. They don't want Cornel West. They don't want Claudia and Karina. They don't want any of these people running, period. So they're going to find a way to make it as difficult for them as they can. Thank you, Liz, SS Secret Service. Thank you so much. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. That's why they're doing this. But what kills me, I think what really drives me crazy, is that Dennis Kucinich already knows how the Democratic Party operates. He knows how the DNC operates. He knows what they did to him. They redrew his district so that he would not have one. Because before we start hearing about Bernie Sanders, Dennis Kucinich used to be the progressive voice in the House, and they had to get him out. Even Bill Clinton didn't want Dennis Kucinich there. Let's continue.
And the fact that we have not yet received a positive response, given the escalating danger of the security environment, is astonishing.
So here's Miranda Devine in the New York Post. She says, what does it take for Joe Biden to grant his political rival, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secret Service protection he's been requesting? Does Kennedy have to be mortally wounded by an assassin's bullet like his father or uncle? So have you received any response from the White House on this?
Not yet. I just want to say, Miranda Devine probably is one of those journalists who has her fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the country. And I think all Americans are starting to become concerned. Why isn't Mr. Kennedy, particularly given the history that Fox just laid out, why isn't Mr. Kennedy receiving Secret Service protection, especially in light of this recent incident? So we're continuing to appeal to the president to listen to the angels of his better nature, if you will, and to grant this very simple request, which, again, is not only about protecting Mr. Kennedy, it's about protecting everyone who's in that environment with him, and it is about protecting the American political process itself. We do not want to go through what this country went through when President Kennedy was assassinated. We cannot do that again. Let's just, what does it take? That's what I'm saying. What does it take for the president to respond?
Well, I guess,
first of all, this shouldn't even be, this transaction here should not be something that has to be approved by the president of the United States, especially, like, think about this. You're running against the sitting president in his party. So obviously there's a conflict of interest in reference to Joe Biden. So of course he can just ignore this and just brush it off. But what I'm talking about in reference to the process, this shouldn't have to go through the president at all. This should just be some type of form that you fill out. You prove that you're a candidate. Obviously they know, but you show your FEC form, all of that, your FEC filing, etc. and you get the Secret Service. Why does this have to go through the president of the United States? Joe Biden, come on. Joe Biden don't even know what's going on right now. He's not with it completely at all. And he said he wrote this letter to Joe Biden. How do we even know that letter got to Joe Biden? I don't think Joe Biden's making decisions. I really don't. But the process itself is flawed.
You know, the obvious point here is that there's appears to be an effort to pretend like he's not running, to pretend like this campaign isn't happening. And we see it, you know, in some of the media around this. We see people saying, why isn't anyone running against the president? And your candidate says, well, hello, here I am. And I have some pretty decent poll numbers that are actually better than a lot of the Republicans who make the debate stage. So maybe it's time for people to start recognizing that. But this context note appeared on X after Mr. Kennedy's tweet. It says the Secret Service does not provide protection until 120 days before the general election. That would be July 8th, 2024. So that's the precedent that they're leaning on here for this.
Well, that is not a precedent because there's a history that's replete in contradiction to that statement of people like President Obama and other candidates receiving protection far in advance of that so-called opening date. So this is really a question. The danger has presented itself. We've had an incident. A man with with guns, other weapons, impersonating a U.S. Marshal, nonetheless, trying to gain access to a secured perimeter. Look, what more do you want? And I'm saying this to President Biden. Please, Mr. President, recognize your responsibility not only to the candidates, but to the political process itself and to the nation. To make sure that we don't go through any kind of trauma as a result of anybody getting hurt.
All right.
The fact that people have to sit here and beg Joe Biden to do this is just really, really, really sad. And you know what else? The majority of Americans don't even know that people are running against Joe Biden. The majority of Americans aren't even paying attention, but they know that Joe Biden is the president. But most of them don't even realize he has primary challengers or any challengers. So the majority of Americans aren't even going to hear about the story. If more were paying attention right now, I'm pretty sure they would be pretty livid about what's happening.
Dennis Kucinich, campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Good to have you here. I hope you'll come back soon. We can talk some more about New Hampshire and the delegate situation up there on the next round. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, see, Dennis Kucinich, like they have to go into Fox News because for the most part, the liberal networks like CNN or MSNBC, they don't really want to entertain this at all. Now, recently there was an event, I believe this is in New Hampshire. Yes, in New Hampshire, because I see Scott Brown. In New Hampshire, where RFK Jr. is asked this question, if the Democratic Party keeps doing this to you, are you going to run? Are you going to split? Are you going to run independent or third party? Listen to what he had to say.
The whole process. So I guess my question, first of all, that's illegal. It's immoral and unethical. Are you going to run as an independent?
Well, at this point,
If they jam you.
if they jam me, I'm going to look at every option.
So he said if they jam him, he's going to look at explore every option, right? And I think what's interesting is that he continues to say if. There is no if. They're already doing it. They're already cheating. They're already rigging the game. What else are you waiting for them to do? You know, it's just, I got to ask questions about this, man. You see this happening right in front of you. What else are you waiting for them to do? This is a very telling moment, guys.
You know, in this state, the state is the template for democracy. This is one of the, between this state and Iowa, this is the only place where you really have to do retail politics. You have to come here, you have to meet people, you have to shake hands, you have to go to the nail salons, you have to go to barber shops, you have to go to diners, go to Roby's Market, you have to do all of these things that people do All the other states in the country are content that, if they fly over 30,000 feet, carpet bomb them with advertising that costs $1 billion that they've raised from billionaires, and then they drop in occasionally for a highly staged, highly orchestrated rally. There's a screened audience, and it's a kabuki theater of democracy. It's not real democracy. Here you got to do real democracy. You got to answer tough questions. From people like Scott Brown, you got to come to this barbecue. You got to face down the old lady in the diner who reads the Financial Times every week, the Economist, and is asking the question, the follow-up question. You got to know the answers. And this is the only state we have to do that. But people do not make up their minds. They've seen the politicians again and again. It's really important. This is a gateway for democracy in this state, and it's really a tragedy that the Democratic Party, which has been fighting for voting rights, one man, one vote, one person, one vote, since I was a little boy, that was the principal thing that the Democratic Party stood for. And the Democratic Party today has made a decision that's going to disenfranchise all the people of New Hampshire and all the people of Iowa because they did not vote for President Biden last time around. And
the Democratic Party has been disenfranchising people for quite some time. This isn't something that just happened this year, because you notice he said they made this decision, now that they're going to disenfranchise voters. Let's remember in 2020 in Iowa, particularly in the case of Iowa, remember Pete Buttigieg announced that he won Iowa early and they weren't even done counting the votes for like Bernie Sanders. Then later on, they came out and said, oh, Bernie Sanders I think he actually did win Iowa. So they've been doing this for quite some time. It didn't just happen this year when they decided to switch the primary, ranking. So I cannot believe that he would be this naive, particularly with Dennis as his campaign manager, because Dennis knows exactly how the Democratic Party works. So I have to ask, what gives here?
The charter of the Democratic Party says that the party must remain neutral in political campaigns. But 6 days after President Biden announced from his basement with a press release, not in real life, the DNC officially endorsed him and said, he is our guy, we are supporting him, we don't want anybody else to run. They're violating their own rules, and I'm going to work.
Let me pause here when he says they're violating their own rules. Remember what I told you about the DNC fraud lawsuit. They don't have to follow their own charter. That was actually ruled by the judge in the DNC fraud lawsuit. They said that the DNC is a corporation. There is no such thing as a Democrat. They do not have to follow their own charter, and they do not have to give you a fair election. So, it's just, this stuff has been around. That's been around going back to Bernie 2016 campaign.
Them over the next couple of weeks and try to reinstate the commitment the party has to democracy. And I have to make the decision by October 15th. And I'll see what events occur between now and then.
Sir, I'm over here to your left.
Okay, and that's around the end of that, because then they cut off that question. Now, there have been some, I want to show this video, but this other one as well. There have been some that are saying they believe that RFK Jr. is trying to wait and see if Joe Biden is actually going to run. Because if that doesn't happen, then maybe that lane could open up more for RFK Jr., right? Wrong. Because what the Democratic Party would do is if Joe Biden does not run, they would probably replace him with someone that is going to garner more or a higher approval rating than Joe Biden would, someone who's going to poll higher. And that person would probably be Gavin Newsom. They're going to, mark my words, if they do this, they're going to insert someone who's going to pretend to be progressive on the issues that matter to most American people, but also continue to be corporate and continue to toe the status quo and the establishment line. What do I mean by that? Gavin Newsom has already come out on record and said that he supports Medicare for all. But they tore it down in California. These are the things people got to think about. Remember, they tried to pass, and they had the votes to pass single payer in California. And they said, nope, don't bring it to the floor for a vote. Big money interest came in, and that did not happen. That's what they're going to do. They'll get someone. If Joe Biden steps down, they're going to get someone to pretend like they're going to say all the right things. They're going to say everyone should have health care in this country. Yes, I support Medicare for all. That'll cue in some of the progressives, right? But then they're also going to say the economy is not working for everyone. We need an economy that works for everyone. Wink, wink, but also shilling for the corporations. They'll send in someone that has co-opted the progressive message, and that person will water it down. And that person would probably be Gavin Newsom. He also hinted towards running independent in this interview with Forbes. This piece right here. Let me put on the captions. There we go.
I check every box.
Is there a scenario, given your passion for these issues, where you might ever consider running as an independent, Mr. Kennedy, given the support you're seeing?
Only if the Democratic National Committee just makes it simply impossible for anybody to win the primary battle.
See, you listen to the rhetoric. Only if they make it impossible for anyone to win the primary ballot. They've already made it impossible. It was made impossible the moment you and Marianne decided to run. They already made it impossible when they said no debates.
That's the only way I would. I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I want to, my preference is to stay within the Democratic Party as long as it's actually democratic.
Well,
just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you have to run through the Democratic Party. He's a Democrat. He could have still run as an independent. No. We got to break away from this duopoly. We got to break away from this. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Zach. I've been arguing kick them off Dems to reach the extremely bubble-wrapped Dem voters whose eyes and ears plugged with censorship. This path earns trust. JB says he's not going to go indie. He's bullshitting until he can endorse Biden. There's that too. That's also a possibility. Liz says, I'm proud of you, Sabs, for showing the injustice, RFK Jr., even though you don't support him. That is why I post all West info. Well, thank you so much, Liz. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Remember to hit the button, everyone. Much love. Hit the like button, guys. That helps me out with the algo. I don't think I said that tonight at all, actually. Thank you for the super chat, DC. 2016 and 2020 Iowa caucuses decided by fake coin flips on video. Plus, DNC made voters download Made to Fail Shadow app. Yep, I remember the Shadow app. In 2020 to illegally mine voter data. Yep, they will find a way. I'll take the comment on Rockfin and then we'll go to this update about Russell Brand. Thank you for the tip, JVB. It seems clear to me that RFK is exposing the DNC. This would be the smart way to handle their corruption. Thank you. Russell Brand. So yes, we talked about the accusations. 4 women have accused Russell Brand of sexual assault. Since then, there have been recent developments. When I covered that story, I told you who is the one that made the push for YouTube to demonetize his channel. And when I say demonetize, I mean, in particular with his case, they'll still show ads on his videos, but he's not allowed to actually recoup the ad revenue. So there's that. Well, I think we know who it is, ladies and gentlemen. Apparently, the UK Parliament sent a letter to Rumble asking them to remove Russell Brand. So I'm just going to go out here on a limb and guess maybe it was the UK Parliament that contacted YouTube. Let's go ahead and bring this up. And shout out to Rumble for dropping the letter. Rumble put this out on Twitter quick and said, hello. Rumble's response to the UK Parliament's letter to our CEO at Chris Pavlovsky. Today, we received an extremely disturbing letter from a committee chair in the UK Parliament. While Rumble obviously deplores sexual assault and all serious crimes and believes that both alleged victims and the accused are entitled to a full and serious investigation, it is vital to note that the recent allegations against Russell Brand have nothing to do with content on Rumble's platform. Just yesterday, YouTube announced that based solely on these media accusations, it was barring Mr. Brand from monetizing his video content. Rumble stands for very different values. We have devoted ourselves to the vital cause of defending a free internet, meaning an internet where no one arbitrarily dictates which ideas can or cannot be heard, or which citizens may or may not be entitled to a platform. We regard it as deeply inappropriate and dangerous that the UK Parliament would attempt to control who is allowed to speak on our platform or to earn a living from doing so. Signaling out an individual and demanding his ban is even more disturbing given the absence of any connection between the allegations and his content on Rumble. Man, they let everything out. We don't agree with the behavior of many Rumble creators, but we refuse to penalize them for actions that have nothing to do with our platform. Although it may be politically and socially easier for Rumble to join a cancel culture mob, doing so would be a violation of our community's values and mission. We empathetically reject the UK Parliament's demands. And I'll show you here 1 second. So here's the letter. Attached is the letter from the UK Parliament. See, Rumble put everything out here on blast. Actually, let me go back because I forgot it gets smaller that way. Hope you guys can see it better. Okay. Now, this is from Chris Pavlovsky, sent to Chris Pavlovsky, CEO of Rumble. House of Commons, London. Listen to this. Dear Chris, I'm writing concerning the serious allegations regarding Russell Brand in the context of his being a content provider on Rumble with more than 1.4 million followers. 1 second. Okay. The Culture, Media, and Sport Committee is raising questions with the broadcasters and production companies who previously employed Mr. Brand to examine both the culture of the industry in the past and whether that culture still prevails today. However, we are also looking at his use of social media, including on Rumble, where he issued his preemptive response to the accusations made against him by the Sunday Times and Channel 4's dispatches. While we recognize that Rumble is not the creator of the content published by Mr. Brand, we are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform. Now, why is that any of their concern? We would be grateful if you could confirm whether Mr. Brand is able to monetize his content, including his videos relating to the serious accusations against him. If so, we would like to know whether Rumble intends to join YouTube in suspending Mr. Brand's ability to earn money on the platform. See what I was telling you? That's what I had believed. They were the ones who reached out to YouTube. We would also like to know what Rumble is doing to ensure that creators are not able to use the platform to undermine the welfare of victims of inappropriate and potentially illegal behavior. Sincerely, Dame Caroline Dinenage, Chair, Culture, Media, and Sports Committee. Heartlands Media said, thank you for standing for free speech to Rumble. So Rumble backed down. YouTube did not. But the audacity of the UK Parliament to contact a social media platform and ask them, number one, to tell them if that person is still monetized on their channel, which again is none of their damn business. And two, if they would consider demonetizing that individual. Again, Russell Brand has been accused. He has not been formally charged with the crime. And two, I still want to see the rule book that explains who is allowed to have a channel on these platforms, which I've yet to see. So like I said, first, they attack the character and the public image. And second, they go after your finances. That's what they're doing. Now, Nico House had a video about this. This is really cool. Nico's doing these little short vids from Hotspot. He had some things to say. This is all just crazy and wild.
So the blowback for the allegations against Russell Brand have officially hit dystopian level. British Parliament, yes, that's the British government for all you Americans out there, sent a letter to TikTok and Rumble to ensure that Brand was not able to monetize his content there. What's wild is that the government in the letter admits that Brand actually didn't violate any community guidelines and there is no legitimate reason to demonetize him. They just don't want him to be able to make money. So I have a question. Did Russell Brand in some way endanger Great Britain's national security? Are TikTok and Rumble government entities from the UK by which Russell Brand is currently employed? Is Russell Brand using either of those platforms to promote or conduct illegal activity? And the answer to all of those questions, obviously, is no. So that, of course, leaves the most important question. Why the hell is the UK government involving itself with allegations in business affairs that have zero to do with the UK government? Because maybe they just told on themselves. And they're showing you that this entire situation was orchestrated on behalf of the government. And remember, in those letters, they went on to list every other way that Russell Brand has been demonetized. So they've made it clear. It was never about getting accountability for the victim. What this was always about was taking out the man who used his massive influence and made it his business to expose corruption at the highest levels, like the corruption that takes place in the UK government and the US government and YouTube and all the media companies that made it their mission to take this man down.
Remember when Julian Assange was accused of sexual assault? Remember that? Glenn Greenwald had some things to say about this. Both the alleged victims and accused deserve full due process before guilt or innocence is assumed. But this British MP demanding platforms ban or demonetize Brand, before that is a preposterous figure. Dame Caroline Dinenage, Baroness Lancaster of Kimbleton with Google ties. Glenn for the motherfucking win. Now look at this. UK Parliament. So this is the woman who signed the letter. Dame Caroline Dinenage is the Conservative MP for Gosport, however you pronounce it, and has been an MP continuously since May 6, 2010. The register of members' financial interests is updated fortnightly online when the House is sitting, and less frequently at other times. Interests remain in the register for 12 months after the interest has ended. The interests set out below are those included in the most recently published version of the register. All versions of the register can be found here. Let's check it out. Well. Actually, I'm going to come out so I can make it a little bit bigger. I don't know if it'll let me, because I'm trying to show you where it'll probably still pop out because it's a picture. Check this out, guys. Employment and earnings. Payments from YouGov. You know, YouGov, the polling thing. I wish I could zoom in, but I can't, guys, because it's a picture in Twitter. 50 Featherstone Street, London ECTY, 8RT for surveys, right? So it shows that she received payments for them. It also says from March 1st of 2022 until further notice, independent non-executive director of L&T Care Development Group. So she was a residential care home developer and constructor. And then that talks about that position. Payments from Ipsos UK. But this is the piece right here. Gifts, benefits, and hospitality from UK sources. Look at this one right here. Whee! Name of donor, Google. UK Limited. I wish I could make this bigger for you guys so you could see it. But actually, I can if I put it over here. Because I really want you to see that it says Google. Here, let me zoom in here. Let me see if it lets me do it over here like this. Because the thing about, no, it doesn't. Twitter sucks with pictures. That's unfortunate. But anyway, oh, Eric just did it. Thanks. Gifts, benefits, and hospitality from UK sources. Name of donor, Google UK Ltd. So this woman, the woman who wrote the letter, apparently June 26th of 2023, that's this year, she received donations from Google. And then she writes the letter to tell them to take the information down. This is why we say follow the money. So Glenn caught that. And now what's really interesting, we come back out of here because there's one other thing that he said. Yes, this part right here. This is the part of the deeply nefarious effort in the West, government seizing power to dictate who can and cannot be heard. A court just ruled the Biden White House engaged in one of the gravest First Amendment attacks in years. So it's just, now, what's really interesting is that one of the people that you would assume would probably defend Russell Brand actually is not defending him, and that's Candace Owens. Candace Owens said that the allegations are credible. Now, a lot of people are throwing punches at Candace because they're like, how can you say that when you defended Andrew Tate? Listen to this.
And Russell Brand proceeded to do whatever he wanted to do with a glazed look in his eye. She then, as we learned, within 24 hours, went to a rape crisis center. So yes, these allegations are credible. And I just want to make that statement that despite the fact that we may all love who Russell Brand is today, and I do love who Russell Brand is today, when Russell Brand was a commie leftist and the media applauded him and put him everywhere, that he was a drug addict. He was a sex addict. He was in his addictions and he was being celebrated by the same media that is now trying to take him down. And that is the portion that is suspicious.
Pause. I don't know about you guys, but I remember when Russell Brand was, when he was acting, I remember the media used to talk about him then too. I never remember them talking about him in a positive way, so to speak. I remember them talking about him in a negative way back then too. Now, obviously for different reasons than they are now. Let's continue.
Why did the media wait until Russell Brand was clean and sober and married and having his third child, right, on the brink of having his third child as he is right now, and speaking out about trying to, and I felt this, when I sat down with him the first time, that he is redeeming himself. Why wait until 11 years to bring forth these allegations? This is the part that people are angry about, because obviously this is a plot to take him down now that he is standing up and speaking about big government, that he is speaking out against COVID, against all the things that are happening. They went, oh, okay, well, we know your secrets. In fact, we kept your secrets when you were our friend, when you were a horrible, rotten person, right? When you were living like you were Hunter Biden, we were willing to bury all the stuff that we knew about you. But now that you're sober and you're speaking a little more conservatively, we're going to take you down. And that should bother you, right? So what is the answer to that? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to this. Obviously, there is something going on, that this is a coordinated effort to take down Russell Brand is true. So two things can be true at once. He is being pursued intentionally by the media. There is no question this is an attempted takedown of Russell Brand, but also this allegation that I have looked into or that has been presented regarding this LA woman is credible. So that's my take on the Russell Brand rape allegations.
All right, I have to pause it there. I think Candace is pregnant. I saw some of the comments in the chat. I see Bitter. What is wrong with her? I think she's pregnant. But let's go ahead and solve that. This point that Zach made here, I believe that incident was because of no condom. That's what I understood as well. That's why she went to the crisis center to get that checkup. I understand that as well. Yeah, Bitter Almonds. I saw all of you in the chat. I saw all you in the chat saying, what happened to Candace? I saw you. But she is saying that she believes at least that particular incident, she said, is credible. So some of the people that are coming to his defense, I did expect. Some of the people that are coming to his defense, I did not expect. And some of the people that are not defending him, I've been kind of, not proud of, but I've been kind of surprised by, just to be honest with you. So I was kind of surprised Candace did not defend him, but she's saying, I think that particular incident in particular, I think we're going to have to look at that one very closely, because again, like from what I read and from what I understood is that was because there was no protection that was used, and that the victim was actually going to that center for testing, like obviously for STDs and like, that kind of stuff. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Now, Russell Brand has also lost sponsors as well. It's not just this YouTube fiasco. Russell Brand loses sponsors following sex abuse allegations. So I just want to go straight to the sponsors here. The sponsors have distanced themselves from Brand after London's Metropolitan Police said Monday it had received a complaint about a 2003 sexual assault. UK media outlets also detailed abuse allegations from 4 other women in incidents between 2006 and 2013. And then let me make sure I go down here. I just want to tell you the companies here. Some marketeers had deals directly with the actor, who during some videos and podcasts would break out of his programming to promote their products and services in so-called host-read ads. Others had sponsored Brand's Community Festival, a multi-day sober wellness event held in July on the border of England and Wales. 3 of these sponsors, Coffee Alternative Mud, WTR, whatever that is, Coffee Alternative Mud, footwear company Vivo Barefoot. That's interesting. These names are weird. Anyway, footwear company Vivo Barefoot and art investing platform Masterworks said they would no longer work with Brand. Masterworks has not had a working relationship with Russell Brand since August of 2023, and we will not seek opportunities to work with him in the future. This was a part I found kind of interesting. Notice Masterworks said they didn't have a working relationship with him since August of 2023, but the accusations were just released this month. So maybe that sponsor in particular, maybe they stopped working with him for other reasons. That's just something to note there. Where else was I here? Vivo Barefoot CEO Galahad Clark in August appeared in a 36-minute long video interview with Brand on one of the actor's YouTube channels as part of a paid partnership between the company and the actor's media company, Stay Free Media. The shoe brand also sponsored Brand's community festival. All sponsorship activity with the actor has been stopped, a spokeswoman for Vivo Barefoot said. What a name. Like, how you come up with this name? Sorry. Supplements company Black Forest Supplements said it is waiting for more evidence on the allegations before doing anything definitive. Excuse me. We believe that someone is innocent until proven guilty. So they're holding off right now. Other sponsors did not respond to inquiries. So we'll have to wait and see, guys. But that's the recent update. Let's take a stab at that poll, shall we? I'm curious to see this result. Should we give more money to Ukraine? Let's see how you guys voted. 1,143 votes. 3% said yes. Who are those 3%? I'm curious. Who are the 3% that said yes? 95% said no, and 2% said that you are not sure. Very interesting. Echo J, just as with Assange, I can separate his journalistic endeavors from alleged sex crimes. He could be guilty of sexual assault and still telling the truth about the parasite class in corrupt governments. It's a good point. I'm going to go to these comments here. Thank you, Brolin. I hope RFK runs Indy, not because I prefer him. I have yet to make a choice on that. But we need to show the Dems we're done with terrible choices. Thank you, Mr. Doug. RFK is like Bernie Sanders, all talk. He will not run as an independent. He knew the DNC was corrupt from the very beginning. Mr. Doug. And thank you, Marvin. What about all the pervs who went to Epstein's Island? What about them? We'll never hear about them, huh? That's a good question. Those are all the stories I have for tonight, you guys. I will be back live tomorrow night. Looking forward to that. All the little chicks with the crimson lips go, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Living in a sin and a safety pin goes, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks, Cleveland rocks. Dun, 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 dun. Ohio. All right, guys, have a good night. Okay. Keep up the fight.